Hi class, it's Dr. DiBiase and I'm here to provide our week 4 overview. This week we're going to be focusing primarily on the concepts of discourse and discourse communities. So we're moving from literacies to the concept of discourse and thinking about the ways in which language works within communities and the ways that communities use language to get work done. So how does this connect to literacy? Well, one of the things that we talked about last week was that literacy was socially situated, that literacy is not some sort of singular, concrete thing that someone can possess, but it's something that comes about through our participation in different social structures, and that is often sponsored by individuals who take a particular interest in our development and acquisition of certain literacy practices used for certain purposes. So how does this connect to discourse? Well, one of the things that we're going to talk about really early this week, particularly when we get into James Paul Gee's essay on discourse, is that we communicate through more than language, right? Spoken language, written language is not the only way that we communicate. It's not the only way that we send information to others. And that we frequently communicate more than just our stated ideas, right? That what we say is part of what we communicate, but we can also convey other things like our mood, our expertise, and other things that shape the way that our messages are received. And as several of the authors that we're going to be looking at this week talk about, we are read and tested and judged by communities, both those communities that we already belong to and those communities that we aspire to belong to. So for example, you are going to college, you're taking a series of courses to acquire a particular major and degree in the hopes that you are going to eventually belong to some kind of professional or scholarly community. And the reality is, as again, several of the readings are going to discuss, those communities will judge you as either belonging or not belonging, and that will determine to a certain degree your ability to succeed in that chosen community, in that chosen career path. And so to understand literacy, right, which we were talking about last week, right, to really understand literacy and its perception, we need to understand how communities operate through language and the production of meaning, and the way that that impacts how people become members of certain groups, or the way that they are accepted as members of certain groups. So some of the big questions that we're going to be asking, what is discourse? And how is it like literacy? And you'll see that I'm capitalizing discourse here, and there's a reason for that you'll see in the reading from James Paul Gee. What's a discourse community, and how do communities form around language practices? So how do language practices, literacy practices, texts, genres, ways of arguing help shape communities of practice? What does it mean to be seen as literate within a specific community, right? So what does it mean for a community to accept you as this last bullet point notes, as having mastery of a discourse or of achieving authority within a particular discourse community? And again, these questions will start to make more sense as you begin to dive into the readings and their associated supporting documents. We're going to start getting ready for Major Project 2, so I'm going to give you a very quick rundown of what you're going to be doing. You'll be receiving a more thorough set of instructions the next day. So Major Project 2 is going to involve you doing some of the kinds of research that we're going to see happening in the readings for this week. And so what you're going to be doing essentially is choosing a community and then conducting research to determine what it means to belong to that community and what it means to establish authority of that community or mastery of that community's particular discourse. And as we make our way through the various readings, I will be sort of helping to foreground how those readings shine light on what you're going to be trying to accomplish in this project. There are going to be two key features of this project that distinguish it somewhat from Project 1. So first, it's going to involve what we'll call multi-method research, in that you're going to be applying several different research methodologies, at least these three. You'll be looking at primary documents, which you did to a certain degree in the first project by looking at your own college application materials. You'll be looking at secondary sources, in this case, scholarly work. Some of that will come from the textbook, some of it will not, and I'll kind of help you with that. You'll also be conducting at least one interview, but possibly more than one interview, of someone who belongs to the community that you're looking at, in order to gain a better sense of what it means to belong to that community and the process by which one gains that belonging. This project is also different in that it can be framed as a multimodal project, which means that it doesn't have to strictly be a text-based project. You could design a particular maybe a web page or series of web pages based around the project that you're doing, if that's something that you have experience with or want to try. You could develop an audio-based project, so maybe you develop something akin to a podcast that would let you sort of convey your research findings in an audio format. You might develop a video, right, to present your research, and that would be fine as well. And so the first thing you're going to be doing for this project, rather than doing sort of a formal first draft, your first step will actually be to develop a proposal, outline, and bibliography over the course of the week that will outline how you're at least initially thinking you're going to approach the project, some of the thoughts that you're having in terms of the research you're going to conduct. And so you'll be given some fairly formal guidelines for what will need to be included, but that will be sort of in lieu of a traditional first draft. So you're going to spend most of your time sort of planning out your research, and even spend some time this week doing some preliminary research so you can begin to think through what you're going to want to look at and why and how. So just to quickly review our main goals for this unit. In a very practical sense, develop a proposal and outline for major project 2, and that's going to be due by the end of Friday. We're going to move from understanding readings to applying theory. So we're going to be looking at 2 particular theoretical readings, one from James Paul Gee, one from Jonathan Swales. They'll provide theoretical frameworks that we can apply. We'll talk a little bit more about that during the week. We'll consider some of the implications of doing multimodal compositions, where there are pros and cons, what works about them, what's challenging about them. I really want you to take ownership of this research process. And then finally, as part of this project, we'll be familiarizing ourselves with some of the Fairfield University resources, including its library and writing center. So I wish you luck as you're moving on. As you get started, here are the first steps for week 4. I want you to review the week 4 module map. We're actually going to be going back to chapter 5 to read Victor Villanueva's excerpt from Bootstraps. Although this is in the chapter on literacy, I think it helps bridge the concepts of literacy and discourse particularly well. And so I'll be referring back to it when we look at the James Paul Gee reading. Take a look at the discussion boards and begin working on the week 4 discussion. And I would strongly recommend getting an early start on the James Paul Gee content. And I'm just going to kick over to the module map to walk us through that really quickly. So again, you don't have to do these things necessarily in the order that I frame them. To some degree, how you approach them is bounded by what I have posted, but I'll be trying to get most of this posted up by the end of Tuesday, so that way if you want to work ahead, you can. So Monday, review the module map, look at this week 4 overview video, which you are presumably doing right now. You're going to read Villanueva, take a look at the discussion boards. If you get done early and you have time tomorrow, you can start jumping ahead by watching the James Paul Gee and Discourse video that I've put together. Note, much of what we're going to talk about is only relevant from the beginning to about 13 minutes in. At that point, I switch over to talking about things that aren't necessarily relevant for this particular version of the class. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. You can certainly watch it to the end to get a sense of the things that I kind of care about with this reading, but it's not as essential. I'll be posting an addendum to our Recognizing and Avoiding Plagiarism series. And then we're moving really hard into Chapter 7. We'll be coming back to Chapter 6 next week, but we're going to skip it for the time being. You can be looking at the introduction to the chapter and Gee's piece on literacy, discourse, and linguistics. We'll kind of formally introduce the project by Tuesday morning, so you'll have a while to kind of look at that. You'll start working on that through Tuesday and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. If you haven't finished Gee by Wednesday, you're going to want to finish Gee, read Class and Mirabelli, both in Writing About Writing. They kind of provide applications of what Gee is talking about. Thursday, we're looking at Jonathan Swales, who provides another theory of discourse in the form of discourse communities, and then a piece of student writing that actually applies some of those theories. And then by the end of the week, there'll be a discourse recap video and a video on research strategies. And on your end, you are going to make sure that you are submitting the major project proposal outline bibliography. During the week, you have a couple of short assignments to take care of. As usual, keep an eye on the discussion boards. You're going to have a couple of short, 4 or 5 question quizzes throughout the week, just to make sure that you're getting some of the key concepts from G in particular. And I've got a couple of short applying assignments, just again to get you thinking through how you might approach doing this assignment and practice some of those skills and scaffold it. So a lot to do this week, but I know we can do it. So good luck, and I will see you during the week.